The abduction. The neon signs of New Haven Colony cast their purple and blue glow across the rain-slicked streets, reflecting off the metallic surfaces of hover vehicles and the chrome-plated buildings that stretched toward the artificial sky dome. Kira Winters walked through the bustling market district, her dark hair tied back, completely unaware that she was being watched. At 26, she had built a life for herself here on the frontier world of Helios Prime, far from the politics and violence of the core worlds. She worked as a terraforming engineer, helping transform hostile alien environments into habitable zones for human colonization. It was meaningful work, peaceful work, everything her father's life hadn't been. The Vrax Syndicate operatives had been tracking her for 3 days. Their leader, Thanks Voss, a towering figure with ashen skin and cybernetic enhancements covering half his face, watched from their cloaked ship overhead. The Syndicate's intelligence suggested she was the daughter of a wealthy core world industrialist, perfect leverage for their extortion schemes. They couldn't have been more wrong. "Target is approaching Sector 7, whispered Rook, one of Voss's best operatives, through their neural comlink. "Street cameras have been looped. Security drones are on a false patrol pattern." "Execute," Voss commanded, his augmented eye zooming in on Kira's figure below. The trap was sprung with military precision. A sonic pulse disabled the nearby comm relays. 2 hovercars collided at the intersection ahead, forcing Kira to detour down a narrow alley. The Syndicate's agents emerged from the shadows like ghosts, their stealth suits shimmering as they deactivated their cloaking fields. Kira sensed something was wrong a moment too late. Her father had taught her basic self-defense before he disappeared from her life 15 years ago. But these were professionals. The neural stunner hit her before she could reach the emergency beacon in her pocket. As consciousness faded, she caught a glimpse of Voss's cybernetic face, smiling down at her. "Package secured," Rook reported, lifting Kira's unconscious form into their waiting transport. "No witnesses, no alarms." "Excellent," Voss replied, already composing the ransom demand in his mind. "Set course for the Outer Rim facility. We'll make the announcement once we're safely away from colonial space." What none of them knew was that Kira's emergency beacon had activated when she fell, broadcasting for a fraction of a second before being crushed. That single pulse of data was enough. It reached a heavily encrypted communications network that hadn't been used in over a decade, triggering a series of automated protocols. In a remote cabin on the ice world of Novus Glacis, James Winters sat before a crackling fire, his scarred hands wrapped around a mug of synthetic coffee. The former commander of humanity's elite Special Operations Force, nicknamed the Ghost for his unprecedented record of successful infiltration missions, had retreated here after his last operation, choosing isolation to protect his daughter from his enemies. A soft chime from an old computer terminal broke the silence. James set down his mug, frost forming in his beard as he crossed to the machine. The message was simple: coordinates, followed by a signal signature he'd programmed into Kira's beacon years ago. His weathered face hardened, eyes turning to steel as he accessed a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside lay the tools of his former life: combat suit, weapons, and a secure quantum communicator. He hadn't touched them in 15 years, since the day he'd walked away from everything to give Kira a chance at a normal life. Now that decision had failed to protect her. The Ghost was about to return to the shadows, and the galaxy would remember why he had earned that name. As his stealth ship broke through Novus Glacis' atmosphere, James activated the quantum communicator, sending out a coded message to the scattered members of his old team. "The Ghost is hunting. The Shadow Protocol is active." Across different worlds, 5 individuals received this message. Each had served under James, each owed him their life, and each knew that this call meant something had gone terribly wrong. Within hours, they would begin converging on his coordinates, bringing with them the skills, contacts, and resources that had once made them the most effective special operations unit in human history. The Vrax Syndicate had just made the biggest mistake of their existence. They hadn't just kidnapped another wealthy target. They had taken the daughter of humanity's most legendary warrior, and they had no idea what kind of hell they had just unleashed. Shadow of the past. The Vrax Syndicate's fortress on Helios 9 rose from the planet's toxic swamps like a twisted metal mountain. Inside its command center, Thanks Voss reviewed the ransom message he was about to broadcast when his intelligence officer burst through the door, face pale with fear. "Sir, we have a situation," the officer stammered, holding out a data tablet. "We ran a deeper background check on the girl. She's not just some industrialist's daughter. She's the ghost's daughter." Voss's cybernetic eye whirred as it processed this information, his organic eye widening in recognition of that infamous name. The Ghost, Commander James Winters, was a legend even among the criminal underworld. Stories of his operations against the Centaurian pirates and the Dresden cartel were still whispered in shadowy bars across the galaxy. Impossible, Voss breathed, but the evidence was there. Old photos, carefully buried records, all pointing to an undeniable truth. They hadn't just kidnapped a valuable target. They had taken the daughter of the most dangerous human operative in galactic history. Meanwhile, on the frozen mining colony of Arcturus Beta, a woman known only as Phantom was already gearing up. She had been James's second-in-command, an expert in electronic warfare and infiltration. The moment his signal reached her, she abandoned her cover as a mining administrator, accessing a hidden vault containing her old equipment. "Computer, activate Protocol Shadow," she commanded. Holographic displays sprang to life, showing tactical data and surveillance feeds from across the galaxy. Her fingers flew across the interfaces, reaching out to her network of informants and slicing through layers of security to track the Syndicate's movements. Across the galaxy, other members of the old team were mobilizing. Marcus "Deadbolt" Rodriguez, the team's heavy weapons specialist, left his job as a starship mechanic on Nuterra. Diana Wraith Chen, their master of disguise and infiltration, slipped away from her position at a prestigious university on Mars. Each of them carried pieces of equipment and intelligence that, when combined, would make them a devastating force once again. On his stealth ship, James prepared with mechanical precision. His combat suit, dormant for 15 years, powered up with a familiar hum. The neural interface connected, flooding his consciousness with tactical data and system diagnostics. Age had not dulled his skills. If anything, it had honed them to a razor's edge. Ghost actual to all points, he transmitted through their secure channel. "Converge on coordinates in the Helios sector. Phantom, what's our intel?" "The Syndicate's using an old Imperial fortress on Helios 9. Phantom's voice crackled through the comm. "Heavy defenses, but I'm already working on their security systems. They're running an outdated quantum encryption protocol. Amateur hour." "Deadbolt here." Rodriguez's deep voice joined the channel. "I still got those experimental EMP charges we appropriated from the Dresden op. Their shields won't know what hit them." "Wraith reporting," Diana added. "I've infiltrated their supply chain. Got a shipping manifest heading to the fortress tomorrow. Perfect way in." In the fortress's detention level, Kira sat in her cell, analyzing her surroundings with a calm that would have made her father proud. The Syndicate had taken her emergency beacon, but they hadn't found the subdermal transponder her father had convinced her to accept years ago. Just in case, he'd said. She hadn't understood then. Now she did. She watched her guards, noting their patrol patterns and shift changes. Her father had taught her more than just basic self-defense. He'd trained her to observe, to think tactically, even if she'd never known the full extent of why those lessons were so important. Voss paced in his command center, security feeds showing his fortress's defenses, automated turrets, energy shields, squadrons of elite guards. It should have made him feel secure. Instead, he felt like a man who had built a house of cards in a hurricane. "Sir," his intelligence officer interrupted again. "We've detected unusual communication patterns in several nearby systems, and our supply manifest for tomorrow. There are irregularities. Lock everything down, Voss ordered, his cybernetic implants feeding him threat assessments and probability calculations. Triple the guard rotations. I want every entrance, every shadow watched. If the ghost is coming. Not if, came a whisper from his neural comlink. A voice that shouldn't have been there, couldn't have been there. When? Voss's organic eye widened as his cybernetic systems began failing one by one. In the swamps below the fortress, shadows moved against shadows. On the supply ships approaching the fortress, identities shifted and changed. In orbital satellites, targeting systems were quietly rewritten. The Ghosts team wasn't just coming, they were already there. And for the first time in his life, thanks Voss knew true fear. Back on his ship, James finished his preparations, checking his weapons one final time. A holo image flickered on his display. An old photo of Kira as a child, smiling, unaware of the dangerous world her father inhabited. He had left to protect her from that world, but now that same world had found her anyway. "I'm coming, little one," he whispered. "And this time, I'm not leaving until every last one of them understands why they should have never touched my daughter." Breaking point. Dawn broke over Helios 9's toxic swamps, casting an eerie green glow through the poisonous atmosphere. Inside the Syndicate's fortress, Thanks Voss watched his security feeds with increasingly frayed nerves. For 3 days, there had been nothing. No attacks, no demands, just silence. That silence was worse than any threat. "Report," he barked at his security chief, a burly draconid named Krell. "All sectors secure," Krell responded, his scaled skin reflecting the harsh lighting. But he hesitated, mandibles clicking nervously. "We've lost contact with 3 outer patrols in the last hour. Could be the atmosphere interfering with comms." Voss knew better. The ghost was out there, tightening the noose. His cybernetic eye scanned through surveillance feeds frantically, searching for any sign of infiltration. The fortress's defenses were formidable. Energy shields, automated turrets, motion sensors, and over 200 armed guards. It should have been impenetrable. In her cell, Kira felt the change in the air. The guards were tenser, their patrols more frequent. She had spent her time wisely, observing and planning. The ventilation shaft in her cell's corner was too small for escape, but perfect for hiding something. Using techniques her father had taught her years ago, she had already fashioned a crude weapon from her meal trays components. High above the fortress, cloaked from all sensors, Phantom orchestrated their electronic warfare campaign from her stealth ship. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces as she systematically dismantled the fortress's security systems. "Ghost, I'm in their network," she reported. "Security protocols are compromised. Deadbolt, you have your opening." At the fortress's main loading dock, a supply ship requested emergency landing clearance. Inside, Marcus Deadbolt Rodriguez sat at the controls, his massive frame cramped in the pilot's seat. The ship's cargo holds contained enough explosives to level a small city, all carefully concealed from scanning. "Copy that," he rumbled, guiding the ship toward the landing pad. "Package is ready for delivery." Diana Wraith Chen was already inside the fortress, having replaced one of the guard captains 3 days ago. Her nanotech disguise was perfect, down to the last detail. She had spent those days memorizing protocols, planting backdoors, and positioning herself for this moment. Inner defenses are mapped, she subvocalized through their quantum-encrypted comlink, ready to disable them on your mark. Ghost. James Winters moved through the toxic swamps like a phantom, his combat suit's systems compensating for the hostile environment. 15 years of retirement melted away as muscle memory and training took over. He had assembled an arsenal of weapons, but his most potent weapon had always been his mind. His ability to orchestrate complex operations where every piece moved in perfect synchronization. "Begin Operation Sunbreak," he commanded. "Phantom, initiate blackout sequence. Deadbolt, you have 3 minutes to distribute packages. Wraith, prepare for Phase 2. The assault began with silence. Throughout the fortress, security systems began failing in a cascade of carefully orchestrated malfunctions. Camera feeds looped, motion sensors recalibrated to ignore specific signatures, and automated turrets received phantom targeting data. Deadbolt's supply ship landed, and the loading crew never realized that their fellow workers were actually combat drones, disguised as ordinary laborers. As they unloaded seemingly innocent cargo containers, each drone positioned its container at key structural points throughout the fortress. Voss felt his control slipping away. Reports flooded in of system failures and communication blackouts. His cybernetic implants, supposedly the most secure technology available, began showing him conflicting data. "Lock down everything," he roared. "No one enters, no one leaves. And bring the girl to the command center. She's our only leverage." But when the guards reached Kira's cell, they found her waiting. Years of her father's training coursed through her veins as she struck with precision, taking down the first guard with her improvised weapon before he could raise an alarm. The second guard reached for his weapon, but a silent shadow materialized behind him. Diana, dropping her disguise at last. "Your father taught you well." Diana smiled, handing Kira a real weapon. "Ready to get out of here." The fortress's lights died all at once, plunging everything into darkness. Emergency systems activated, casting red emergency lighting through the corridors. In that moment of confusion, Deadbolt's explosives detonated, not to destroy, but to create precisely calculated breaches in the fortress's structure. Through those breaches poured combat drones, their programming optimized by Phantom to target specific frequencies of weapons and shields. The fortress's defenders found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move, while shadow-like figures moved through their ranks with lethal efficiency. James scaled the fortress's outer wall, his suit's grappling system finding purchase in the metallic surface. Combat analysis data streamed across his HUD as he synchronized his movements with his team's assault. Every shot, every explosion, every system failure had been calculated to create maximum chaos while minimizing collateral damage. In the command center, Voss watched his security feeds dissolve into static one by one. His fortress wasn't just under attack, it was being dismantled with surgical precision. Years of criminal enterprises had taught him to recognize when a situation was lost. "Prepare my ship," he ordered Krell. "We're leaving." A voice spoke from the shadows behind him, a voice that had haunted the nightmares of criminals across the galaxy for decades. "No," James Winters said softly, stepping into the red emergency lighting. "You're not." Convergence. The command center crackled with tension as James Winters faced Thanks Voss. Emergency lighting cast alternating shadows and crimson highlights across their faces, one weathered by years of combat, the other half transformed by cybernetic implants. Between them, Krell, the Draconid security chief, raised his plasma rifle, scales gleaming. "You've lost, Voss," James said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Surrender, and this ends without further bloodshed." Voss's cybernetic eye whirred as it calculated combat probabilities. "The ghost," he sneered, artificial confidence masking his fear. "You're not as legendary as they say. Just an old man who couldn't protect his daughter." James didn't rise to the bait. His combat suit's sensors were already mapping every detail of the room, identifying weapons, analyzing threats. "Last chance," he offered, though his tone suggested he hoped Voss would refuse. Meanwhile, 3 levels below, Kira and Diana fought their way through corridors filled with confused and desperate syndicate forces. Diana moved like a dancer, her nanotech disguise system shifting between appearances to disorient their opponents. Kira surprised herself with her own capabilities, years of her father's training flowing through her muscles with instinctive precision. Contact left. Diana called out, dropping 2 guards with precise stun shots. "Phantom, we need a route to the command center." "Working on it." Phantom's voice crackled through their comms. "Uploading tactical overlay now. Warning. Detecting heavy resistance on level 2. Deadbolt, Can you clear them a path? The fortress shook as Rodriguez's precisely placed charges detonated, opening new routes through the structure's architecture. Combat drones swarmed through the openings, their targeting systems perfectly synchronized with the team's movements. Path cleared, Deadbolt reported, his deep voice tinged with satisfaction. But hurry, structural integrity is becoming a concern. In the command center, the standoff exploded into violence. Krell fired first, his plasma rifle illuminating the room with blue-white energy. James moved with impossible speed, his combat suit's enhanced reflexes carrying him past the shot. His return fire caught the Draconid in his armor's weak points, sending him crashing to the floor. Voss revealed his own modifications, his cybernetic arm transforming into a weapon. I've upgraded since the last time anyone faced the ghost, he snarled, unleashing a barrage of micro-missiles. James's combat suit deployed countermeasures, filling the air with sensor-jamming particles. He rolled behind a control console, already plotting his next move. Phantom, status on command center systems. Almost there, she replied. 10 seconds until full override. Those 10 seconds became an eternity of combat. Voss's cybernetic systems gave him enhanced strength and speed, but James had something no amount of technology could replicate. Decades of experience in the galaxy's deadliest conflicts. He moved through the chaos like water, each action flowing seamlessly into the next. 2 levels below, Kira and Diana encountered the fortress's elite guard unit. These weren't ordinary mercenaries. They were cybernetically enhanced soldiers, their movements unnaturally fast and precise. Diana's disguise systems weren't fooling their enhanced sensors. Down, Kira shouted, pulling Diana behind cover as energy weapons filled the corridor with deadly light. She spotted a maintenance panel and remembered something from her engineering work. Phantom, can you overload the power conduits in this section? Already on it, Phantom replied, admiration clear in her voice. Like father, like daughter. Overload in 3, 2, 1. The corridor's power systems erupted in a cascade of electrical discharges, overwhelming the elite guard's cybernetic systems. Diana and Kira pushed forward, fighting with complementary styles, Diana's fluid grace matching Kira's precise efficiency. In the command center, the battle reached its crescendo. Voss's frustration mounted as none of his attacks found their mark. The ghost seemed to anticipate every move, staying one step ahead of even his enhanced combat algorithms. Why won't you die? Voss roared, his cybernetics beginning to overheat from sustained combat. Because, James replied, his voice deadly calm, you took my daughter. The command center systems suddenly came under Phantom's full control. Displays flickered, emergency shutters slammed down, and Voss's cybernetic systems received a flood of conflicting data. In that moment of confusion, James struck. His attack was precisely calculated, not to kill, but to disable. Key components in Voss's cybernetic systems shorted out under targeted electromagnetic pulses. The syndicate leader crashed to his knees, his enhanced body betraying him. The command center doors burst open as Kira and Diana arrived, weapons raised. Father and daughter locked eyes across the room, 15 years of separation crystallizing into a single moment of recognition. But there was no time for reunion. The fortress's structural integrity was failing. Deadbolt, begin evacuation sequence, James ordered, securing Voss with electromagnetic restraints. Phantom, download everything from their systems. Wraith, clear us an exit route. Already done. Diana smiled, her nanotech disguise shimmering as it deactivated. Time to leave this party. Kira stepped toward her father, 1,000 questions in her eyes. James met her gaze, seeing not just the child he'd left behind, but the strong, capable woman she'd become. We have a lot to talk about, he said softly. Yes, she replied, a slight smile touching her lips. We do. But first, let's get out of here. Aftermath. The toxic swamps of Helios 9 reflected the orange glow of explosions as the Syndicate fortress began its final collapse. Multiple ships lifted off from the crumbling structure. Evacuation vessels carrying surrendered Syndicate forces, their weapons disabled and systems locked down by Phantom's relentless electronic warfare. James's team moved with practiced efficiency, their stealth ship waiting in a hovering position as combat drones provided cover fire. Deadbolt managed the evacuation from the ship's tactical station, his fingers dancing across the controls with surprising delicacy for their size. 2 minutes until complete structural failure, Phantom reported through the comm system. All priority data has been secured. The Syndicate's entire network is ours. In the ship's main hold, Kira watched as Diana secured their prisoner. Voss sat in defeated silence, his cybernetic systems permanently disabled by the specialized electromagnetic pulses. The once proud Syndicate leader could barely lift his head to meet her gaze. "Your father," Voss said quietly, his organic eye fixed on her. "We had no idea. If we had known, you would have chosen a different target," Kira finished for him. "Someone else's daughter, someone else's life to destroy." Her voice was steady, controlled, but carried an edge that made even Diana glance up in appreciation. The ship shuddered as James made his final approach, combat suits still active as he covered their withdrawal. He moved with the same fluid grace she remembered from childhood training sessions, but now she understood the true depth of skill behind those movements. "Clear," James called as he entered, the hold's doors sealing behind him. "Phantom, take us out." The stealth ship rose smoothly into the atmosphere as behind them, the fortress finally succumbed to its wounds. The structure collapsed in on itself, swallowed by the toxic swamps that would soon erase all trace of its existence. Above, stars became visible as they broke through Helios 9's poisonous clouds. In the ship's common area, James's team gathered for the first time in 15 years. They moved with the easy familiarity of people who had complete trust in each other, even after so long apart. Phantom's holographic presence flickered above a console, her features softened by a rare smile. "Just like old times," Deadbolt grinned, cleaning his favorite weapon. "Though I don't remember the explosions being quite so precise back then." "We've all learned a few things," Diana replied, her nanotech disguise fully deactivated to reveal her true face. "Some of us more than others." She nodded toward Kira. Father and daughter sat across from each other, years of unspoken words hanging between them. James had removed his combat suit's helmet, revealing a face weathered by time and experience, but his eyes were gentle as they studied his daughter. "You kept up with the training," he said finally. Kira nodded. "Every day. Even when I didn't understand why. Even when I was angry at you for leaving." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I thought you left because you didn't care enough to stay." "I left because I cared too much," James replied, his voice rough with emotion. "After your mother died, my enemies, they would have used you to get to me. I thought distance was the only way to keep you safe." He laughed quietly, without humor. "I was wrong." "The galaxy's changing," Phantom interjected, her holographic form shifting slightly. "The old shadows aren't as dark as they used to be. Maybe it's time for new approaches." The team looked at each other, years of shared history and understanding passing between them. They had come together one last time, proving that their skills hadn't faded, that their bond remained strong. "What happens now?" Kira asked, looking around at these legends who had emerged from retirement to save her. "That depends," James said softly. "I spent 15 years hiding from who I am, trying to protect you by staying away. But you've proven you don't need that kind of protection anymore." He leaned forward. "What do you want to happen?" Kira thought about her life on New Haven Colony. Peaceful, predictable, and ultimately incomplete. She thought about the last few days, about how naturally she had worked with her father's team, about how right it had felt to finally understand her heritage. "I want to learn," she said firmly. "Everything. Not just the basic training you gave me, but all of it." And she looked around at the team. "I want to help. The Syndicate isn't the only criminal organization out there preying on innocent people." Diana smiled. She really is your daughter. Ghost. Better. Phantom's hologram flickered with approval. She's her own person. James studied his daughter's face, seeing the same determination that had driven him throughout his career, but tempered with something else, a wisdom he had taken far too long to learn. Then we adapt, he said, reaching out to take her hand. We find a new way, not hiding from our enemies, but not letting them define us either. Together. The stealth ship cruised through the darkness of space, carrying its crew of legends and new beginnings. Below, Helios 9's toxic swamps had already begun to reclaim the remains of the fortress, erasing all evidence of the battle that had taken place. But throughout the galaxy's criminal underworld, word was already spreading. The ghost had returned, and he wasn't alone. A new chapter had begun, one that would combine the best of the old ways with the promise of the new. The daughter of humanity's most dangerous warrior had found her place in the galaxy, not as a victim to be protected, but as a force to be reckoned with in her own right. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, father and daughter began the journey of bridging 15 years of separation, one story, one lesson, one mission at a time.